boy, it's another week of me procrastinating on the bigger project that I teased in my last video, but in my defense, I had a lot more going on this week than usual, and also, I just really wanted to draw this group. It's so overdue. That's right, it's another D&D party. Not just any D&D party, actually one of my older parties, and one of the most difficult parties to schedule. That's not me calling anyone out, because I know that I've been a major part of why this group in particular is unable to have a consistent schedule, because that is, unfortunately, D&D baby. Sometimes I wonder if scheduling conflicts come up because the concept of D&D appeals so strongly to people who have a tendency to hyperfixate and in general really enjoy deep delving into very specific sections of knowledge. People who have an increased tendency to hyperfixate also often may have symptoms like executive dysfunction, social anxiety, time blindness, and if you really want to think a little bit too hard about it, these might be the same people who feel guilty scheduling fun and enjoyment into their plans and don't feel like they can prioritize time doing something that feels neither productive nor lucrative. And maybe that's why it's so hard to get a D&D group together consistently. Not that I have any psychology knowledge grounds to make such a broad sweeping statement about so many people because that would be very reductive of me, but you know, maybe worth having to think about. Also, it's a quick reminder that it's okay to schedule a nice time for yourself every once in a while. At me, at you know who you are. Anyways, let's take a look at this trio. We actually just introduced a fourth character to the party, but they haven't really been formally inducted into the group, so I drew the original three. No less love to the fourth party member, Thorn. You're amazing, sweetie. Keep up the good work. I recently have been recommended a lot of art theory and tutorial videos, which is great because I could really use more of that as someone who has had like -12 art classes in their life. I guess I did take one architecture class for like middle schoolers for like a couple of months or something like that. I don't know if that counts, but back to the art theory YouTube videos. I was recommended a video on art structure and composition, and in general I think I'm okay at composition, but when it comes to single character designs on simple backgrounds, I usually just have them standing, and I have such incredible art envy for any artist who has a style like this, or this, or this. So I wanted to put a little effort into making some conscious design and posing choices and put in some of those minimalist florals and geometry that I feel like is so often featured in these kinds of drawings. I just think they're neat. So instead of 3 standing figures on a height chart like I would normally have for a D&D group, I decided to have a nice soft lounging image of, from left to right, Cram, Calcifer the cat, Calliope, and Serena, a dearly beloved group that is just not super well suited for as grim of a campaign as this is turning out to be. The first character that I tend to draw in a group is usually the one I'm most comfortable drawing or have the most ideas for, and this is true of Calliope Truskruvka. Calliope is my character. She's actually one of the few characters that I drew first and then retroactively fitted to suit character details for D&D. I don't have the original file that Krita, the DM, actually sent to me when I thought of this character, but it was a long list of sketches of girls who were drawn inspired by different kinds of cows. And of course, everything in me wanted to immediately draw a strawberry Highland cowgirl. And that's how Calliope's last name was also derived. Truskawka is the Polish word for strawberry, and krówki is the name of a soft, milky Polish candy that's name literally translates to small cow. So, Truskrówka is essentially a little Polish pun meaning small strawberry cow, and I personally get a lot of joy from that, and hopefully you do too. Her background is pretty simple for an environment that is actually relatively cyberpunk. She's from a little mountainside farm where she learned she was very in tune with cleric spellcasting abilities, and once she learned that, she worked incredibly hard to earn money and do well on exams to get enough of a scholarship and many recommendations to attend the Royal Academy for the Arcanely Gifted, or as the students call it, RAG, much to the chagrin of the administration. Calliope is one of my few lawful good characters. She's very academic and very concerned for the well-being of everyone around her. Alignments are fun and all, but let's be honest, I've seen 1,000 MBTI and D&D alignment charts for Lord of the Rings characters, and they're all different, for good reason. Lawful good in the sense of Calliope means she panics about going against the headmaster's wishes, but she's also honest that she explored the dungeon under the school because it's technically part of the school and technically not leaving school grounds, so technically it's okay. She also prioritizes the safety of the students above prioritizing the laws of the school, as anxious as she gets about breaking the rules, because technically authority doesn't dictate Calliope's internal law, it's her upbringing and religion that do. So take that, alignment chart purists. Obviously, since cow isn't exactly a race in D&D Beyond, I went with the next best thing, Furbolg. I'm kind of joking about the next best thing bit. I know that a Minotaur would have been been a more suitable race to build a cow-based girl off of, but the wisdom buff of the Firbolg was kind of nice, and the DM was nice enough to allow me that because, you know, they knew that I was going to be a cleric, because what am I if I'm not a support character? When am I ever not a support character? And if you maybe think that Calliope looks a little familiar, I appreciate you greatly, because that means you've been checking out my Instagram page, which has been kind of a ghost town lately, Twitter also. Both social medias I've been using primarily to give notice of late uploads, which I'm sorry that that's all I do, but life gets busy, man. I'm trying to work on that. Anyways, Calliope is a character that I've drawn before, not for the channel, but a couple of different times at least. I just really enjoy drawing her different features. She's got different skin tones. I really like the pink color palette. She's got cool horns, which I love to draw, and of course she has little gold earrings, which I also love to add to all of my characters. The next character in the lineup is a little blue tiefling. Well, actually I don't think she's a tiefling technically. She is somewhere between a tiefling and a dragonborn flavor-wise, to be honest. I maybe should have paid a little more attention to the part of Corvitica's world building to give you better specifics about that whole situation, but anyways, this is Serena. She is definitely royalty, or at least related to royalty. Unlike Calliope, she has a ton of connections in the upper echelons of the kingdom of Haraway. In fact, her cousin Lilith is the queen, who I keep referring to as Serena's cousin in-game instead of Her Highness, which the DM seems to get a big kick out of every single time I do it. Serena's a little more dismal in her viewing of the world, understandably so. Everything is soured by her childhood experiences and her knowledge of the underhanded dealings between royal members. So she sees the world through a much dimmer but significantly more realistic filter than Calliope does, which is probably why Strawberry Cow and Blueberry Tiefling make such a stellar pair. Well, they're not a pair yet, but they are roommates.
And they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
I don't think Serena likes to admit to caring much for anyone or anything at this point in life, and it's a relationship, let alone a friendship, that would bring absolute chaos and destruction to Calliope's life should Serena's immediate family learn of any type of interaction between them. Obviously, as distinctly not the player of Serena, I don't really have insight to all the key aspects of Serena's family and backstory and whatnot. Obviously, I want to have that explored naturally through the progression of the campaign, so I didn't ask the player about her. I'm still a little sorry that this is pretty much all the info that I can really share about this incredible sorcerer character. What I can share are my campaign notes, so while we're watching this very cool speed draw go zoom, let me list what has happened in order with very little context, because first of all, I think it's kind of funny that way, and second of all, I don't want to give too much away. I don't exactly know their plans, but Corvitica has talked a little bit about formalizing a set of mechanics and maybe developing the environment for a TTRPG at some point, so I want to make sure that enough of the plot remains relatively vague so there aren't any spoilers. So what happens on the first day? Obviously the welcoming ceremony, and we're all gonna do great and we're all gonna have a good time, and we follow a cat and then a pigeon into an underground labyrinth. Calliope promptly gets possessed by two people. At this point we only know it's one, but we do later figure out there's a guy and a lady. But anyways, we continue following the labyrinth and we find a laboratory in the labyrinth with documents of questionable experiments. Once we get out of that whole situation, we promptly get detention where we should have been expelled, but you know, the dean just kind of tells us we're on thin ice. Calliope is devastated about this. Cram, the Goliath, finds a one-eyed cat in his dorm room and names it Calcifer. We'll just gloss over the fact that Cram's roommate is actually a mouse. Anyways, we get detention, which leads us to the library and also leads us to finding secret tunnels in the back of the library. In those secret tunnels are cryo chambers, a bunch of puzzles, and portals. Oh my. Once we come back to the surface, we take a much needed break from underground chaos to go to a very casual, normal dinner with Serena's cousin, the Queen, where Serena brings Calliope as her +1. Only turns out it's not super relaxing because apparently the lady that has possessed Calliope hates the current queen, so that was a bunch of super fun, awesome wisdom saving throws that I had to make, and a lot of suppression of good and evil with magic. After that whole situation, we come back to the school for testing days, because what's more high fantasy than getting categorized into groups named after fantasy creatures. Serena and Cram tested into the group called Draconis, and Calliope tested into a group called Pegasi. But apparently she did well? And now she gets to be the caretaker of the group mascot, which is a little baby Pegasus that she gets to name Atlas. We can gloss over the part where Calliope actively used command on the queen to pass the exam. We don't have to worry about that part. Anyways, demons start causing problems at the school. Believe it or not, the lady half of the two spirits in Calliope's head is in other people's heads too, and the demon is that lady's fault. We go back underground, go through a bunch of portals, and eventually get to some cool rooms. One of them is concerningly in literal actual hell, and also one of them has a basilisk, and also another one has a pool of restoration where Calliope decides to take a quick dip and she nicely becomes unpossessed for now. And then we get to the worst room, where none of us decided to take a long rest before fighting a boss battle. There was a lot of bonking done by spellcasters, which is very unfortunate, but we did do it. And also we found Thorn, the previously mentioned fourth character of the party, who was not included in this drawing. Sorry, Thorn. After that unfortunate series of events, we finally go back upstairs and take a much needed nap, but administration asks us what happened, and we honestly tell them, we got rid of the demon that you were going to evacuate the entire school for. You're welcome, and then we go to bed. At this point, the school decides to hold a poorly timed assembly about mental health and awareness, which our D&D group sneaks away from to chase, believe it or not, another cat. And, believe it or not, we end up back in the laboratory that's in the labyrinth, and believe it or not, Calliope once again gets possessed, but this time she's specifically possessed by the second spirit in her head, a significantly less malicious one who is a scientist. And I think that's where we left off, which is weird because chasing a cat into a series of tunnels and getting possessed is exactly what happened in the first couple of episodes, so it's a wild ride, folks. Speaking of a wild ride, I feel like after I drew Calliope, I progressively made the characters in this drawing gradually hotter and hotter, which I don't know what I'm doing, don't blame me. They're hot. It's Serena and Cram. It's, you know, they're kind of, Last in the lineup, we have Cram, who is a Goliath druid. He also tears all the sleeves off of his uniforms, which I'm 90% sure is a violation of school dress code, but I mean, you know, we got rid of some serious problems at the school, including a gigantic demon, so surely they can't be upset at him for the sleeve thing at this point. We don't really know a whole lot about his backstory. It's hinted at that he's seeking his family out, but not a lot of development has gone down that plotline because we're too busy fighting demons in the basement, I guess, but I'm thoroughly excited to see where his plotline goes. While I mess around with the background of this drawing, and I truly do mess around a lot, I guess I kind of want to retract a statement that I made earlier. I said that this group is not super well suited towards a darker tone campaign, and I mean, they are a pretty spunky group. 1 part rich and jaded and 2 parts incredibly out of their depth and blindly optimistic. These precious children have no business trying to destroy the monarchy, or the magic system, perhaps, but at the same time, they're sort of perfect anti-authority, unfazed by demons and basilisks, willing to get possessed multiple times just to solve a mystery, and whether it's fueled by denial, blind optimism, or anywhere in between, they're kind of like the magic world version of the Scooby-Doo gang. Cram and Calcifer, I guess, are Shaggy and Scooby, which makes Serena Daphne, Calliope Velma, and I suppose Thorn is Fred by default. I might have to workshop that one. It's not a perfect match, but what I'm getting at is the kids are alright. And there's the Scooby-Doo my D&D party, drawn in a little bit of a different look than my usual work, but you know what? I'm kind of into it. Hi, girl. Also, since next Friday is the announcement for the different teams in this year's art fight, I just wanted to let you all know Calliope has been up to draw on my profile since last year. That was my first year doing art fight. She was the most popular of my characters that year. And we'll see what happens this year. Hopefully this year I'll be able to participate more and also participate with more of you. If you don't know what art fight is, I'll put a link in the description to their info page as well as to my personal profile on art fight, which clearly hasn't been updated at all since last year. And And I'm also going to upload a few more characters on there. Absolutely feel free to let me know if you're interested in having me upload a specific character from my vast collection. And also, if you stayed this long in a video, I have a little treat for you. Good news to report after panic from 2 videos ago. Inkashti is fine. She lives on. She was down 2 death saves, but she did make it with the help of her party members. And fingers crossed that she actually makes it to level 6, because that will finally grant her the sorcerer ability meta magic, which is something that I need for this build, and it is only a result of my poor decision making that she has to be at level 6 to do any of that. But anyways, last but not least, on June 17th, that will mark 1 year since I have started uploading videos to YouTube, which is kind of crazy to think about. I just want to genuinely thank you all for being along for the ride. Hopefully this will be able to keep going for many years down the line, and I hope this next year of content brings much more exciting content and new friends join us on this journey. But as I always say at the end of all of my videos, who knows? Not me.